The wind screamed across the fjord, tearing through the night as if the gods themselves were enraged. In the longhouse, flames flickered wildly, casting monstrous shadows across the wooden beams. Old Eirik said, "The runes have spoken, and the curse awakens tonight." His voice trembled though his face remained stern. Warriors gathered, gripping their axes, eyes darting nervously at the smoke curling into the rafters. Alaric said, "The gods have punished us before, and they will punish us again if we falter." His words struck like iron, heavy and unyielding. Astrid stood silent in the corner, her gaze fixed on the blood-red moon through the smoke-stained window. The night was thick with fear, a silence louder than thunder. In the distance, a wolf howled, and every head turned, eyes filled with dread. The ancient prophecy, buried for generations, now rose like a ghost no fire could banish. The curse was no longer just a tale whispered to frighten children. It was alive, pressing against the walls of the hall, demanding to be heard. The silence after Eirik's words was unbearable, broken only by the crackling fire and the distant howl of wolves. Alaric said, "The curse is no story, it hunts us now." His voice was sharp, each word cutting deeper into the dread already weighing on the hall. Astrid said, "If the gods bring this doom, then why do they spare no warning?" Her voice trembled, her hands clutching the fur shawl around her shoulders. Eirik's eyes glistened as he whispered, "The runes warned us long ago, but we were blind, we were proud." A warrior muttered, "Then what hope remains for us?" His voice cracked with fear. The fire popped, sending sparks high into the smoke-filled air, and for a moment, it seemed as if the flames themselves whispered of death to come. The hall trembled as thunder rolled across the fjord, shaking bows and shields from their places. Alaric said, "This storm is no accident. It is the gods." Astrid drew closer to the fire, her eyes wide, her lips trembling though no sound escaped. Eirik raised the runestones again, his voice breaking as he said, "The gods demand a sacrifice." The warriors recoiled, muttering curses and prayers under their breath. One young man shouted, "No more blood!" His cry was swallowed by the roar of wind outside. The storm's fury grew, rattling the walls until they groaned like wounded beasts. Astrid whispered, "What if the curse seeks vengeance for sins unspoken?" Eirik's eyes met hers, heavy with knowledge. He said, "There are truths buried beneath this land, truths older than our fathers." Alaric stepped forward, his voice cutting through the storm. "Then we must unearth them before the curse devours us." The fire dimmed, embers glowing faintly as shadows thickened across the hall. Eirik said, "The curse cannot be undone without blood, and perhaps not even then." His words were met with silence. Astrid pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "Then who among us will the gods claim?" Alaric slammed the butt of his axe into the floor, sparks flying, and said, "If blood must be shed, then let it be in battle, not in fear." The warriors erupted, some cheering, others muttering dread. The storm outside howled louder, as if mocking their defiance. The night had not ended, yet Alaric's eyes burned with memories that returned like ghosts. He sat near the fire, head bowed, voice heavy. Alaric said, "I see their faces still, the men I led to their deaths." His words cracked with guilt, though no tears left his eyes. Astrid placed a hand on the wood beside him, but spoke nothing, her silence heavier than words. The storm outside rattled the longhouse, lightning cutting shadows across his scarred cheek. Old Eirik said, "The curse feeds on guilt, and it will devour you if you do not face it." Alaric clenched his fists, his knuckles white as bone. A warrior whispered from the shadows, "The gods chose him once, perhaps they will again." But Alaric only stared into the flames, seeing not fire but the screams of fallen brothers. At dawn, when frost clung to every branch, Alaric walked the path toward the fjord, where the ally awaited. A lean figure leaned against a carved post, cloak wrapped tight. Bjorn said, "You still carry the dead with you." His voice was rough yet steady. Alaric paused, eyes narrowing as he studied his old comrade. "And you carry your scars in silence," Alaric replied, his tone both accusing and understanding. Bjorn smirked faintly, though his eyes betrayed pain. "We are alike in our brokenness," he said, "but the curse will not wait for us to mend." The wind carried their words into the fjord, where ice cracked like bones breaking. Together, they turned back toward the longhouse, the storm still raging above. By midday, the longhouse was restless, the air thick with suspicion. The heavy doors opened, and a woman entered, her steps deliberate, her cloak glistening with snow. Freya said, "I bring word of the chieftain's will." Her smile was soft but her eyes sharp. Warriors straightened, watching her with unease. Alaric rose slowly, hand on his axe. He said, "Why should we trust your tongue when it serves him?" Freya tilted her head, her blonde hair glinting like steel in the firelight. "Because the curse will strike us all, and I am not eager to die." Astrid studied her from the shadows, suspicion burning behind her calm gaze. Old Eric whispered, "Even the fairest serpent carries venom." As the storm raged, omens spread like wildfire. Livestock lay dead in the snow, crops blackened under frost, and children cried from hunger. Astrid said, "The gods bleed the land as punishment." Her voice trembled. Old Eric answered, "It is the curse's hand. The earth itself recoils." Bjorn slammed his fist on the table. "We starve while the chieftain feasts." His anger burned hotter than the fire. Freya smirked faintly, her words cutting like a blade. "Perhaps the gods punish weakness, not power." The warriors erupted in argument, voices colliding with the storm outside. Alaric's voice thundered above them all. "If this curse takes everything, then we must strike before we are ash and bone." Silence fell, heavy with fear and fragile hope. Night returned with no peace, only more whispers of doom. The chieftain's men entered the hall, bearing gifts of meat and mead. Their leader, Harold, said, "Our master offers strength in return for loyalty." His tone dripped with command. Alaric stood firm, eyes locked with Harold's. "We need not your master's chains," he said, his voice echoing. Harold smirked, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Astrid stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Chains, no matter how golden, still bind the neck." The warriors muttered among themselves, torn between fear and pride. Freya's eyes glimmered, unreadable, as she watched Alaric. Old Eric whispered, "The curse takes many shapes, and power is its sharpest." Snow fell heavy on the coastline as war horns echoed, drowning the cries of gulls. Alaric said, "Steel will answer the curse if the gods demand blood." His grip tightened on the axe, knuckles pale under leather. Bjorn strode beside him, breath steaming in the cold. He said, "Then we strike not only for survival, but to remind them we are still men, not ghosts." Their warriors marched behind, boots crunching through frozen sand. Astrid walked among them, her gaze sharp, though fear lingered in her eyes. She whispered, "This path leads to death or redemption." Freya followed silently, her cloak drawn tight, a faint smirk betraying secrets she would not speak. Old Eric leaned on his staff, runes clutched close, muttering to unseen forces. The sea roared in defiance, waves crashing hard, as if gods themselves raged against their choice. The village raid began with fire and steel, screams breaking through the storm. Alaric shouted, "No mercy for those who stand with the chieftain." His voice cut through chaos. Bjorn cleaved through a foe, blood spraying across the snow. Astrid darted between combat, pulling a child to safety, her hands trembling as she dragged him behind a shield wall. Freya moved gracefully, blade in hand, her strikes too precise for chance. Alaric saw her cut down 2 men and muttered, "Even wolves hide in lamb's clothing." Old Eric raised his staff from the hilltop, runes glowing faintly as he chanted, though his lips quivered. The clash of axes and swords echoed like thunder, the curse feeding on their rage. Smoke rose heavy above the burning huts as Alaric leaned against his axe, chest heaving. Astrid approached, her face pale, her voice cracking. She said, "How many children must pay for the god's wrath?" Her words stung sharper than any blade. Alaric glared at the flames. "Better they burn now than live cursed tomorrow," he said coldly, though his eyes betrayed doubt. Bjorn rested his sword, shoulders sagging. He said, "Our strength wins battles, but what of hearts we blacken?" Old Eric clutched his staff, his eyes hollow. "The curse grows stronger with each drop of blood spilled," he whispered. Freya's lips curved faintly, though her gaze stayed cold. She said, "Sometimes blood is the only language the gods understand." Later, Bjorn entered the longhouse, breath ragged, holding a bloodied scrap of parchment. He said, "I found this among the slain, proof of betrayal." He slammed it on the table. The warriors leaned in, voices rising. Astrid picked it up, her eyes widening. She whispered, "The chieftain knew of the curse, and he fed it with blood." Old Eric's face turned pale, his runes slipping from his hands. "This truth was buried," he muttered, "and now it returns to drown us." Alaric struck the table with his fist, his voice thunderous. "Then we are not cursed by gods alone, but by the greed of men." Freya's eyes darted toward the shadows, her lips pressed in silence, as if guarding truths she would not reveal. That night, when all had quieted, Alaric stood outside beneath the blood-red moon. His breath froze in the air, his eyes fixed on the heavens. He said, "If this curse was born of man's greed, then let me be its end." His voice was low, heavy with resolve. Astrid approached softly, placing a hand on his arm. She whispered, "Your strength alone cannot carry this burden." He turned, eyes weary but fierce. "Then I will break before I bend," he said. Behind them Bjorn stood watch, his hand resting on his sword, loyalty etched in his stance. Old Eric remained at the door, muttering prayers that vanished into the cold wind. Freya lingered further back, her face half hidden, a faint smile tugging at her lips as the storm gathered. The longhouse was heavy with smoke, warriors silent as Harald entered draped in wolf pelts, eyes gleaming with firelight. Harald said, "The curse is no accident. It is the gift of the gods to me." His voice shook the hall like thunder. Alaric stepped forward, fury twisting his scarred face. "You invited this plague for power?" he roared. Harald smirked, his hand brushing the hilt of his sword. "The gods demand sacrifice and I gave them yours." Gasps filled the air. Bjorn growled, "You betrayed your own blood." Astrid's hand clutched her shawl, eyes brimming with disbelief. Old Eric trembled, whispering, "The chieftain sold our souls for his throne." The flames spat sparks as if agreeing, shadows stretching across the walls like claws. Freya stepped forward from the shadows, her cloak trailing, her smile too calm for the storm inside the hall. Freya said, "You believed me ally, but I have always served Harald." Her words were daggers, slicing bonds unseen. Alaric's eyes widened with rage. "You wore trust as your mask." Astrid gasped, stepping back, betrayal stinging her like a wound. Bjorn spat at the ground. "We should have known your charm hid poison." Freya's blue eyes glimmered with cold triumph. "The gods favor those willing to spill blood for destiny." Old Eric dropped to his knees, muttering, "The serpent bears her fangs at last." Harald laughed, the sound filling the hall like a storm tide breaking walls. The hall erupted as warriors shouted, some raising blades for Harald, others for Alaric. Alaric's voice boomed above the chaos. "Choose honor or chains." His words split the air. Bjorn drew his sword, shouting, "I stand with the man who bleeds for his people." Half the warriors surged toward Alaric, axes gleaming. Harald sneered, raising his hand. "The strong rule, the weak kneel." Freya's voice joined his, ringing sharp. "Those who defy him will feed the curse tonight." Astrid pressed close to Alaric, her voice soft but resolute. "You cannot fight both gods and traitors alone." Old Eric staggered to his feet, staff raised. "Blood divides us, and the curse will feast." His cry was drowned by steel striking steel. Amid the clash, old Eric struck his staff to the ground, a deep hum shaking the hall. He cried, "The truth will not stay buried." The runes in his hand flared with ghostly light. Shadows twisted, and the air thickened with dread. Alaric froze, staring as visions of past sacrifices burned before his eyes. Children carried to altars, warriors bleeding in snow, all fed by Harold's ambition. Astrid screamed, covering her face. Harold's laughter cut through it all. "Yes, I gave the gods their due and they crowned me." Freya's smirk widened. Bjorn growled, "Then tonight, we crown you with your own blood." Eric staggered, drained, his voice fading. "The curse feeds on betrayal, and it is full tonight." When the visions faded, silence clung to the hall, broken only by the crackle of fire. Alaric stepped forward, his face carved with fury. He said, "This ends with steel and blood." Harold drew his sword, its edge glinting like ice. "So be it," he growled. Freya's voice whispered like venom, "Destiny favors the ruthless." Bjorn raised his blade, standing firm. "And honor favors the brave." Astrid placed a trembling hand on Alaric's arm, whispering, "Do not let rage blind you, or you'll be lost to the curse." Old Eric fell to his knees, gasping, "The gods watch. Every drop will weigh the scales." The warriors circled, fire painting their faces, storm howling outside as the duel for fate began. The longhouse became a forge of fury, warriors shouting as steel clashed against shields. Alaric raised his axe high, his voice thunderous. "Tonight we fight not for power, but for freedom." His cry ignited half the hall, men rallying to his side. Harold sneered, drawing his blade with deliberate menace. "Freedom is a lie men whisper to mask weakness," he spat, stepping forward. Bjorn roared, "Then let weakness carve your grave." His sword struck sparks from a shield. Astrid pressed her back to the wall, clutching her shawl, eyes wide with terror and resolve. Freya circled like a hawk, her blade gleaming, lips curled into a cruel smirk. Old Eric staggered near the fire, runes clutched to his chest, whispering prayers drowned in the storm. The clash thundered, blades striking like lightning, screams filling the smoky air. Harold swung his sword in brutal arcs, scattering foes like brittle twigs. Alaric blocked a strike, sparks flying, his muscles straining under the weight. Harold snarled, "You were born to kneel beneath me." Alaric growled back, "I was born to break the chains you forged." Their weapons locked, faces inches apart, rage twisting every feature. Bjorn fought like a wolf beside them, cutting down a foe before shouting, "Alaric, hold steady!" Astrid darted forward, dragging a wounded warrior out of the fray, her tears streaking through ash on her face. Freya slipped behind, her sword carving into Alaric's flank, blood blooming dark on his armor. He stumbled, but his grip never faltered. Alaric staggered, blood dripping, but Bjorn caught him, shoving back enemies with wild fury. Bjorn shouted, "You will not fall here, not while I still breathe." His eyes burned like coals. Freya laughed cruelly, wiping Alaric's blood from her blade. "The gods take their due," she hissed. Astrid screamed, lunging at Freya with a fallen spear, but Harold intercepted, backhanding Astrid to the ground. She gasped, clutching her ribs. Alaric roared, fury boiling into strength, and he swung his axe into Harold's chest, though chainmail held. Harold staggered but did not fall. Bjorn struck again, his blade carving through Harold's guard, but Harold's sword cut deep across Bjorn's side. Blood sprayed. Bjorn collapsed to one knee, breath ragged. Bjorn's blood pooled beneath him, his voice weak but steady. "Go, Alaric, finish it, for all of us." His words cracked, but his gaze was proud. Alaric's jaw tightened, rage and grief colliding. Harold smirked, raising his blade for a killing strike. Astrid screamed, "No!" throwing herself between them, shield raised, sparks exploding as Harold's blow struck. Alaric roared, swinging his axe with every ounce of strength, the blade tearing into Harold's arm, crimson spraying. Harold bellowed in pain, staggering back. Freya cursed, lunging to protect Harold, but old Eirik slammed his staff to the ground, runes flaring bright, shadows gripping her legs. "The gods see you now, betrayer," he croaked. Freya snarled, slashing wildly, but the runes held firm. The hall shook as Harold and Alaric faced each other, blood staining the floor. Harold roared, "I am chosen by gods, you cannot kill destiny." His eyes blazed with madness. Alaric's voice thundered back, "Then destiny dies with you." He charged, axe swinging with the fury of storms. Harold's blade rose to meet him, steel screaming against steel, sparks filling the air. Astrid cried out, shielding Bjorn's broken body, her tears glistening in firelight. Freya shrieked in rage, bound by Eirik's runes, clawing at the magic. Old Eirik's voice shook as he shouted, "This duel seals the fate of all." With a final cry, Alari's axe broke through Harold's guard, cleaving across his chest. Harold gasped, dropping his sword, blood spraying as he fell. The longhouse shuddered as Harold's corpse hit the ground, his blood spreading like a black tide. The storm outside howled, shaking the rafters with unholy force. Alaric staggered, axe dripping crimson, his breath ragged. Astrid rushed to him, whispering, "It is over, or is it only beginning?" Her eyes trembled with fear. Bjorn coughed blood, voice weak, but steady. "You struck him down, but the gods do not forgive so easily." Freya shrieked in rage, struggling against glowing runes. "Fools, you have spilled the vessel. Now the curse is unchained." Old Eirik lifted his staff high, his voice breaking. "The earth will split, the skies will burn. The curse devours all in its hunger." A crack split the earth beneath the hall, fire and smoke belching upward as if hell's maw opened. Warriors stumbled, crying out in terror. Alaric shouted, "Hold fast, the curse will not take us without a fight." Astrid gripped his arm, her voice desperate. "The land itself rebels. How can you fight the earth?" Freya laughed bitterly, her voice echoing like steel. "The gods tear flesh and soil alike when men dare defy them." Bjorn pushed himself upright, swaying, blood dripping from his side. He said, "If the curse wants sacrifice, then it will have mine." Old Eirik's face turned pale, his voice trembling. "No, boy, it is not yet your time. The curse demands more than one life tonight." The fire spread as the roof cracked open, lightning spearing down through smoke. Alaric fell to one knee, blood soaking his side, his eyes dark with pain. Astrid cried out, "You cannot give in now, not after all we have lost." Her tears streaked her ash-covered face. Bjorn stepped forward, standing between Alaric and the storm, his sword raised. He shouted, "If the gods crave blood, they will take mine before his." His voice was thunder itself. Freya screamed, fighting against rune chains that sizzled under strain. Old Eirik slammed his staff again, runes glowing like fire. "Alaric," he cried, "the curse can be broken only if you surrender not your life, but your soul." Alaric's eyes widened as the words sank in. The hole shook like the world itself cracked, and Bjorn fell to the ground, blood pouring, his breath fading. He whispered, "Brother, finish it." His voice vanished in the storm. Alaric staggered forward, gripping axe with shaking hands. Astrid cried, clutching Bjorn's body, her voice breaking, "Do not let his sacrifice be wasted." Freya shrieked, "Your deaths mean nothing. The gods will devour all." Her words twisted in fury. Old Eirik raised his staff, his eyes glowing with ancient fire. "Now, Alaric, bind your soul to the runes. Sever the curse with your will." Alaric's roar shook the rafters, a cry of defiance and pain. The runes flared bright as the storm tore through the roof, fire and snow swirling together. Alaric slammed his axe into the ground, his roar merging with thunder. The runes blazed, a pillar of light tearing through the storm. Astrid shielded her face, crying out as winds flung ash and snow like knives. Freya screamed, her body twisting as the rune chains dragged her into the fire. Old Eirik collapsed, his staff shattering as the light consumed the hall. "The curse is broken," he gasped, his final breath fading. Harold's corpse turned to ash, swallowed by flame. Alaric stood at the heart of the storm, his body trembling, eyes burning white as though gods claimed him. Astrid sobbed, reaching for him, but the light flared, and he vanished within its glow. Silence followed, the storm dying at last. The storm faded into silence, the longhouse reduced to ash and ruin. Astrid stood amid the wreckage, her shawl torn, her eyes red with grief. She whispered, "He is gone. Yet I feel him still." Her words trembled in the cold air. Bjorn's lifeless body lay beside her, his sword resting across his chest, a warrior's farewell. Old Eric's staff smoldered where it had broken, his body crumpled and still, his sacrifice etched into the earth. Freya's ashes swirled into the wind, her final scream devoured by silence. Astrid's voice cracked as she cried, "Alaric, did the gods take you, or did you become one of them?" The only answer was the eerie calm of a sky clearing, the blood-red moon fading to pale dawn. The surviving warriors gathered, faces scarred with smoke and sorrow. One said the chieftain is dead, yet the cost is heavier than gold can measure. Another whispered, "What leader remains to guide us?" Astrid stepped forward, her voice steady though her heart trembled. "Alaric gave everything so we may live. We will honor him not with fear, but with fire rebuilt." Her eyes shone with tears and resolve. The men bowed their heads, axes lowered in solemn respect. "Then his name will echo in every hall," one murmured. Astrid turned to the horizon, whispering, "Your burden is mine now, Alaric. I will not falter." The wind carried her vow into the fjord, as if the gods themselves listened. Astrid walked to the fjord's edge, her breath curling in the icy air. She knelt, dipping her hands into the freezing water. "If the gods hear me, hear this," she whispered. "His soul belongs not to you, but to us." Her reflection rippled, and for a fleeting moment, Alaric's face appeared in the water, his scarred cheek and fierce eyes softened by light. She gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You are with me still," she said softly. The image faded, leaving only her trembling reflection. Behind her, warriors placed stones over Bjorn's body, their voices low in mourning chants. The fjord roared softly, as though answering her prayer. Later, the children of the village gathered near Astrid, their eyes wide with fear and hope. One small boy asked, "Will the gods curse us again?" Astrid knelt, brushing snow from his hair, her smile weary but kind. "No, little one," she said softly. "The curse was broken by those who bled for you. Remember their names, and you will never be alone." Her words eased the whispers of fear. Warriors watched, their eyes heavy with grief, but softened by her resolve. Old women murmured blessings, tracing runes in the air. Astrid rose, her shawl fluttering in the wind, her gaze steady. "This tribe will endure," she said firmly, her voice carrying over snow and smoke. That night, silence blanketed the fjord, stars shimmering over snow. Astrid stood alone beneath the northern lights, her shawl whipping in the wind. She whispered, "Alaric, your fight is done, but your vow lives in us." Her breath drifted skyward like smoke. The aurora rippled green and crimson, painting the night in ghostly fire. For a heartbeat, she heard his voice in the wind. "Stand, Astrid, for they need you." Her eyes filled with tears, yet she smiled, strength blooming where sorrow dwelled. She whispered one final vow, "Your legacy will not fade." The fjord echoed with silence, eternal and haunting, carrying his memory into the stars.